She sent the message without checking the number. Elena Moore crouched in the narrow space between the wardrobe and the wall, knees drawn tight to her chest, phone clutched in both hands like it was the only thing keeping her alive. The apartment was silent in the way silence becomes dangerous. Too thin, too alert, stretched tight over something violent waiting to happen. Her breathing sounded too loud. Every inhale felt like a risk. She typed with shaking thumbs. "He's going to kill me. Please help." She didn't know who she was sending it to. She didn't even remember opening her contacts. All she knew was that she couldn't call. She couldn't scream. She couldn't run. The front door was between her and him, and the locks had never stopped him before. Footsteps moved somewhere beyond the hallway. Low. Deliberate. Elena pressed herself harder into the shadows as if darkness could erase her. Her phone buzzed. Who is this? Her stomach dropped. Wrong number. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might give her away. She typed again, faster now, fear blurring everything. Sorry. I texted the wrong person. But please, he's here. I can't leave. I think tonight is different. The silence afterward felt endless. Then her screen lit up. Stay where you are. No questions. No hesitation. Another message followed. Send your location. Elena swallowed. She didn't know this person. Didn't know where they were. Didn't know why their words felt colder than comfort, but steadier than panic. She sent the address. The sound came then. The unmistakable click of a door opening somewhere in the apartment. Her pulse screamed. Another message arrived. Do not move. I am on my way. There was something terrifying about how certain it sounded. Not I'll try. Not I've called someone. Not help is coming. Just certainty. Elena slid down to the floor, phone glowing in her lap, counting her breaths because counting seconds felt impossible. Somewhere behind the walls of the apartment, a man who believed he owned her was getting closer. And somewhere else, closer than she realized, Kang Jae-hyun was already moving. She didn't know yet that this was the moment her life split in two. She only knew that whoever had answered her message was not coming to save her. He was coming to claim the situation. And once Kang Jae-hyun involved himself, nothing was ever returned the way it was found. Elena Moore pressed her back against the cold wall and willed herself not to breathe too loudly. The apartment was too quiet. Not the calm kind, this was the kind of silence that creaked and listened back. The lights were off, but moonlight slipped through the narrow gap in the curtains, laying thin silver lines across the floor. She stood in the bedroom closet, half hidden behind hanging coats that smelled faintly of dust and detergent. Her shoes still on because she hadn't dared bend down to take them off. Somewhere beyond the door, a sound shifted. Footstep. Or maybe just the building settling. Her heart slammed so hard it made her dizzy. This wasn't how it usually went. Usually there were words first. Accusations. That tight, smiling calm that meant she had already said the wrong thing hours ago and was only now paying for it. Tonight there had been no warning. Just the look in his eyes, flat, focused, decided, and the sudden certainty that something inside him had snapped into place. Elena's hand closed around her phone. It was slick with sweat, the screen smeared with fingerprints she didn't remember making. She didn't bother checking the time. Time had stopped meaning anything the moment she realized the door was locked from the inside. She thought of the neighbors, the thin walls. How many times she had convinced herself that if things ever went too far, someone would hear, someone would knock, someone would help. No one ever did. Floorboard creaked. Elena flinched, pressing herself deeper into the shadows. Her mind raced uselessly through options she didn't have. She couldn't run. She couldn't hide, not really. She couldn't scream without making everything worse. She needed help. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she unlocked her phone. The contact list swam in and out of focus, names blurring together. She tried to think of someone, anyone, who would answer without questions, who would come without asking why. Her hands were shaking too badly to scroll properly. Another sound. Closer this time. Panic surged, sharp and hot, wiping out everything except the need to do something. She tapped the first number her thumb landed on and opened a message. not even checking the name at the top of the screen. The words came out in a rush, misspelled and raw. "He's going to kill me." She stared at the sentence, her pulse roaring in her ears. It looked unreal, like something from someone else's life. She added another line, desperate to explain, to be believed. "I'm hiding. Can't get out. Please help." Her thumb hovered for half a second. Then she hit send. The message vanished, replaced by that small, awful word. Delivered. Elena held the phone to her chest and waited. Nothing happened. The silence stretched, thin as wire. She counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Somewhere in the apartment a drawer slid open. The sound was casual and hurried. It was worse than shouting would have been. Her phone buzzed. She nearly dropped it. "Who is this?" Her stomach dropped straight through the floor. Wrong number. Of course it was the wrong number. She hadn't checked. She hadn't thought. She had just reached out into the dark and grabbed whatever was closest. A small, hysterical laugh bubbled up and died in her throat. She typed back fast, fingers slipping. "Sorry. I sent that by mistake." Another sound outside the closet. Was. As if someone were standing still, listening. Elena's vision blurred. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand and typed again, slower this time, because the truth felt heavier than the apology. "Please don't ignore this. I don't know who you are, but I'm scared. He's here. I don't think I'll make it through the night." She sent the message before she could second-guess herself. Her phone stayed dark. She pressed her forehead against the wall, fighting the urge to slide down to the floor. This was it then. One last mistake stacked on top of all the others. Reaching out to a stranger who owed her nothing. A shadow moved beneath the crack of the closet door. Elena squeezed her eyes shut. The phone buzzed again. Her breath caught painfully as she looked down. "Stay where you are." The words were simple, flat. They didn't sound like comfort. They sounded like instruction. Another message followed almost immediately. "Send your location." Elena's hands trembled harder now, but something else cut through the panic. A strange, unfamiliar steadiness. Whoever this was hadn't asked what happened. Hadn't asked why. Hadn't told her to call the police or try to escape. They had assumed she couldn't. She sent the address. The moment the message delivered, a sound echoed through the apartment, the unmistakable click of a door opening. Elena pressed a hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound as her phone buzzed one more time. "Do not move." She sank down slowly, back against the wall, phone glowing in her lap like a fragile promise. Her entire body shook, fear and exhaustion tangling together until she couldn't tell them apart. She didn't know who she had reached. She didn't know what kind of man answered messages like that without hesitation. She only knew that somewhere beyond the thin walls of the apartment, something had been set in motion. And nothing, she sensed, would be the same after this. The phone stayed warm in Elena's hands long after the last message. "Do not move." Those words settled into her chest with an odd weight. Not relief, not comfort, but something steadier and far more unsettling. They weren't a suggestion. They weren't even reassurance. They were a command, delivered with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. She stared at the screen, half expecting it to buzz again. Didn't. The apartment shifted around her. A door opened fully now. Hinges whispering as if whoever stood on the other side didn't feel the need to hide their presence. Footsteps crossed the living room at an unhurried pace. Each one landed with purpose, not searching, not frantic. It made her skin prickle. Elena pressed herself tighter into the corner of the closet, phone clenched against her palm. Her pulse beat in her throat, loud enough she was sure it would give her away. Another vibration. Confirm the address. Her fingers hovered, stiff with fear. She typed it again anyway, slower this time, checking each number as if accuracy might somehow protect her. The reply came almost instantly. Just that. No explanation. No questions. The simplicity of it sent a shiver through her. Whoever was on the other end wasn't panicking. He wasn't improvising. He sounded like a man following a plan already in motion. She swallowed and typed before she could talk herself out of it. Who are you? The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. In the silence between messages, Elena became acutely aware of every sound. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the wall clock, the soft scrape of something being moved across the floor. She imagined him pausing, listening, smiling to himself. Her phone buzzed. Someone who answers when messages like that are sent. Her stomach tightened. That wasn't an answer. It was a warning. She tried again, desperation pushing past caution. Please. He's looking for me. Seconds stretched. Somewhere outside the closet, a drawer slammed shut. The sound was sharp, irritated. Then the reply came. No. Elena's breath stuttered. How could he know? She hadn't explained anything. Hadn't sent photos or details or names. Yet the message felt certain, as if the man reading her words could already see the scene clearly in his mind. Another vibration followed. Listen carefully. Her hand shook so badly she had to steady the phone against her knee. He believes he controls this space. He does not. A chill ran through her, slow and deliberate. Do not run. Do not reveal yourself. Stay exactly where you are. Elena pressed her lips together, nodding once though he couldn't see her. She wanted to ask how long. She wanted to ask how far away he was, whether he was real, whether this was all some cruel misunderstanding. She didn't ask any of it. Instead, she typed the question that had lodged itself painfully in her chest. Are you calling the police? The reply came after a pause that felt intentional. Whoa. Her heart skipped. Why not? She typed, fear spiking anew. The answer arrived slower this time. Because by the time they arrive, this will already be over. The words sent a wave of cold through her veins. Over didn't sound like safety. It sounded final. Footsteps stopped just outside the closet door. Elena clamped a hand over her mouth as panic surged, white-hot and blinding. Her phone buzzed again, the glow harsh in the darkness. He is closer than he thinks. Tears burned behind her eyes. She wanted to scream, to beg this stranger to hurry, to do something. Instead, she sat frozen, trusting a man she had never met because there was no one else left to trust. How long? She typed, barely able to see the screen. The reply came at once. Minutes. Her chest tightened painfully. Minutes felt like hours. Like lifetimes. Stay with me, the next message read. The phrasing was strange. Not stay there. Not stay hidden. Stay with me. As if he were already present. As if the distance between them was something temporary and insignificant. The closet door handle rattled. Elena squeezed her eyes shut, breath coming in shallow, broken pulls. Her phone buzzed one last time. My name is Kang Jae-hyun. The name meant nothing to her. And somehow it meant everything. And I don't lose what I decide to protect. Elena pressed the phone to her chest and held on, heart pounding, as the sound of approaching footsteps filled the apartment. For the first time that night, fear shared space with something else. Something darker. Something that felt like inevitability. The silence came so suddenly it felt louder than any sound before it. Elena crouched in the darkness, every muscle locked tight, listening to the space beyond the closet door as if her life depended on it, because it did. The footsteps that had been moving through the apartment slowed, then stopped. No drawers opening, no doors slamming, just stillness, the kind that waits. Her phone rested in her palm, screen dim but awake, as if it too were holding its breath. Kang Jae-hyun didn't send another message. The absence of words unsettled her more than the commands had. She had grown used to noise meaning danger, raised voices, sharp movements, the rhythm of escalation. Silence usually came afterward, thick with consequences. This felt different. She counted her breaths, careful to keep them shallow. 1, 2, 3. Somewhere close by, fabric brushed against fabric. The faint sound of someone shifting their weight. He was still there. She could feel him, the way you feel a storm through pressure rather than sight. Her fingers curled around the phone, knuckles whitening. Minutes, he had said. She didn't know how many had passed already. Time stretched and folded in on itself until each second felt separate, fragile. She imagined Kong moving through the city with that same calm precision he had typed with. No wasted motion. No doubt. The thought anchored her in a strange way. Another sound, metal this time. Soft clink, almost casual. Her heart leapt into her throat. She bit down on her lip, tasting copper, and forced herself not to move. The urge to do something, anything, scratched at her skin. Run. Hide deeper. Scream. But his words echoed in her mind with unnerving clarity. Do not move. She obeyed. Her phone buzzed once, startling her so badly she almost cried out. She looked down, hands trembling. I'm outside. The message was simple. Impossible. Her chest tightened. Outside where? The building. The street. The apartment. Before she could ask, another vibration. You may hear nothing for a moment. Her stomach clenched. That is normal. Normal. The word felt surreal, like it belonged to another life entirely. Nothing about this felt normal. Yet the certainty in his tone wrapped around her nerves like a steadying hand. The apartment remained quiet. Too quiet. Then, faintly, from somewhere beyond the walls, came the sound of engines. Not the distant hum of traffic, this was closer. Multiple vehicles. Doors opening and closing with muted thuds. Voices murmured low enough that she couldn't make out words, only intent. Her pulse raced. She imagined dark shapes moving with purpose, shadows aligning themselves with entrances and exits she'd never noticed. She imagined control returning to the world in a way she hadn't felt in years. The man inside the apartment shifted again. A curse muttered under his breath, sharp with irritation. Elena squeezed her eyes shut, fear spiking as the tension snapped tight. Then something changed. Not noise, absence. The air itself seemed to shift, as if pressure had been redistributed. The man's movements grew hesitant. His footsteps slowed. The confidence she had learned to recognize faltered, just slightly. Elena's phone buzzed. He knows now. Her throat went dry. Knows what? She typed, her fingers clumsy. The reply came without delay. That this situation no longer belongs to him. A sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Not loud. Not aggressive. Precise. 3 knocks. Even from inside the closet, Elena felt it. The difference between a demand and a declaration. The sound carried weight, finality. The man in the apartment froze. Silence followed. Heavy. Expectant. Elena's heart hammered so hard she worried it would shatter her ribs. She clutched the phone, grounding herself in its solid presence. Another message lit the screen. Whatever happens next, you stay where you are. Her vision blurred with tears she hadn't realized were gathering. She nodded again, a reflex now, trusting a man she had never seen because he had already proven something crucial. He was not rushing. He was not reacting. He was taking over. The knock came again, closer this time, reverberating through the walls. Elena heard the man's breath hitch. Heard fear, naked and sudden, seep into the room like a living thing. Her phone buzzed once more. Help has arrived. The words settled over her like a blanket, warm and terrifying all at once. Relief surged, sharp enough to hurt. She pressed her forehead against her knees, shaking silently as the realization took hold. She was no longer alone in this. Whatever was about to happen, it was already moving forward. Methodical, inevitable. The waiting was ending. Control was shifting hands. And somewhere just beyond the walls of the apartment, Kong Jae-hyun was proving that silence, when wielded correctly, could be far more powerful than violence. Elena stayed where she was, heart racing, as the world outside her hiding place began to change. The knock came a third time. It wasn't louder. It didn't need to be. The sound carried through the apartment with quiet authority, settling into every corner like a verdict. Elena heard the man breathe sharply, heard the faint scrape of his shoes against the floor as he shifted his weight. The confidence that had filled the space moments ago thinned, replaced by something brittle. From the darkness of the closet, Elena watched a sliver of light move beneath the door as he crossed the room. Each step was slower now, measured. As if instinct had finally caught up with whatever danger, His mind was only beginning to register. Her phone vibrated once. Do not react. She pressed it to her chest, heart pounding. The front door opened. There was no crash. No raised voices. No dramatic confrontation. The door simply ceased to be a boundary. Cool air slid into the apartment, carrying with it the subtle scent of night and something sharper beneath it. Metal, leather, control. Footsteps entered. Not one pair. Several. They didn't rush. They didn't fan out. They moved with the quiet coordination of people who had done this before and expected to do it again. Elena heard the man speak. His voice pitched somewhere between anger and disbelief. Who the hell? The sentence never finished. Silence fell again, thicker than before. Elena's breath caught as something shifted in the air, a pressure she felt rather than heard. She had no words for it, only the instinctive understanding that someone else now occupied the room, someone whose presence bent the space around them. Another vibration against her palm. He is with me. She didn't need to ask who. The footsteps moved closer, unhurried, each one deliberate. Whoever had entered didn't rush to assert themselves. They didn't need to. Control radiated outward from them, steady and inevitable. A voice spoke then. Whoa. Carried without effort. This ends now. No anger. No threat. Just certainty. Elena squeezed her eyes shut as fear and awe tangled together in her chest. She imagined the man standing taller, bracing himself, clinging to whatever authority he thought he still had. She imagined it dissolving under the weight of that voice. There was the soft sound of something being taken, keys maybe. Or a phone. A quiet instruction murmured too low for her to catch. Compliance followed. Immediate. Absolute. Her phone buzzed again. Do not come out yet. She stayed frozen, muscles trembling, as the world beyond the closet rearranged itself. She heard the man protest once, weakly. The sound didn't carry far. It didn't last long. Not because he was silenced with force, but because he was ignored. That somehow felt worse. Footsteps crossed the bedroom. Elena sensed rather than saw the moment someone stopped just outside the closet door. The air shifted, charged and still. Then the door opened. Light spilled in, sudden and blinding. Elena shielded her eyes instinctively, blinking against the brightness. When her vision adjusted, she saw polished shoes first. Immaculate. And hurried. They belonged to a man who stood just beyond the threshold, posture relaxed, hands at his sides. He didn't reach for her. He didn't rush her. He waited. Elena's phone vibrated one last time. You may look at me now. She lifted her gaze. Kang Jae-hyun filled the doorway without crowding it. Dressed in a dark coat that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His face was composed, carved into clean lines that revealed nothing he didn't intend to show. His eyes met hers with an unsettling steadiness, dark, assessing and utterly unafraid. He looked at her the way one looks at a situation already solved. Behind him the apartment felt different, quieter, smaller, as if it no longer belonged to the man who had terrorized her within it. You're safe, Kang said. The words were simple, factual, not comfort, not promise. Safe because he had decided so. Elena's knees weakened. She didn't realize she was moving until he stepped forward, one hand lifting just enough to steady her without pulling her closer. His touch was firm, careful, controlled. He adjusted his grip when he felt her tremble, accommodating without comment. She's coming with us, he said to someone behind him. There was no discussion. Elena swallowed, the enormity of the moment crashing down on her all at once. She was leaving, not running, not escaping, being taken. Kang turned his attention back to her, his voice lowering. You did well, he said. You listened. Something in his tone, approval perhaps, sent a strange warmth through the fear still buzzing in her veins. He removed his coat and draped it around her shoulders with deliberate care, the fabric heavy and grounding. Stay close, he added quietly. It wasn't a request. As Kang Jae-hyun guided her out of the closet and into the transformed space of her apartment, Elena realized with startling clarity that chaos hadn't ended because it was fought. It had ended because someone more powerful had arrived. And power, she was learning, didn't need to shout to be obeyed. Elena barely remembered crossing the threshold of the apartment. One moment she was standing in the ruins of a life she no longer recognized. The overturned chair, the cracked frame on the wall, the air still vibrating with fear. And the next she was wrapped in Kang Jae-hyun's coat, guided forward by a steady hand at her back. Not pulled. Not rushed. Directed. The hallway lights were harsh after the darkness of the closet. She squinted, her steps uneven, body lagging behind her mind as shock finally loosened its grip. Men stood spaced along the corridor, quiet and watchful, their attention fixed outward rather than on her. They didn't stare. They didn't whisper. She was not a spectacle. That alone felt strange. Kang walked beside her, close enough that she could feel his presence without looking. He matched his pace to hers without comment, slowing when she faltered, pausing when her breath caught. It was control expressed through restraint, and it unsettled her more than force ever had. The elevator waited at the end of the hall, doors already open. As they stepped inside, Elena's gaze flicked back once, instinctively, toward the apartment she was leaving behind. It looked smaller now. Hollow. As if the fear had been the only thing giving it weight. The doors slid shut with a soft chime. The descent was silent. No one spoke. Elena focused on the sensation of movement beneath her feet, the gentle hum of the elevator, the weight of the coat anchoring her to the present. Her hands trembled as she clutched the fabric, fingers digging into something solid because everything else felt unreal. She glanced up at Kang, then away just as quickly. His expression hadn't changed. Focused, unburdened by what had just occurred. Not because it hadn't mattered, but because he had already placed it where it belonged. Finished. Filed away. The doors opened into the underground garage. Cool air washed over her, carrying the scent of concrete and oil and night. A black car waited near the center, engine idling softly, its surface catching the light in clean, unbroken lines. One of the men opened the rear door without looking inside, already certain of the outcome. Kang paused before guiding her forward. "You will sit," he said quietly, indicating the seat. "Someone will examine you once we arrive." Examine. Not treat. Not help. She nodded, the words barely registering. As she slid into the back seat, the leather was cool against her palms. The door closed with a muted thud that sounded final in a way she couldn't quite articulate. Kang took the seat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, though he didn't lean in. The car pulled away smoothly. Streetlights streaked past the windows, blurring into lines of gold and white. Elena watched them in silence, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. Pale, wide-eyed, wrapped in a stranger's coat like a borrowed identity. "You're leaving me here?" she asked suddenly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Her voice sounded thin, fragile. Kang turned his head just enough to look at her. "No," he said. "You're leaving with me." The distinction landed heavily. She swallowed. "Am I free?" The question hung between them, delicate and dangerous. Kang considered her for a moment, as if weighing how much truth she could bear in her current state. When he spoke, his tone was even. "You are no longer in immediate danger," he said. "That is not the same thing." Elena's fingers tightened in the coat. The city changed as they drove. Familiar streets gave way to wider roads, cleaner lines, buildings that rose higher and farther apart. She felt the distance accumulating, not just miles but separation. From neighbors who had never intervened. From a door she no longer had a key to. From a version of herself that had survived by staying small. The car slowed. She sensed the change before she saw it, a shift in atmosphere, in scale. When the vehicle finally stopped and the door opened, she looked out at a building of glass and steel rising into the night, its upper floors lost to the clouds. Her chest tightened. Kang stepped out first, then turned back to her. He offered his hand. Not insistently, not gently. Simply there. Elena hesitated, then placed her trembling fingers in his palm. As he helped her out of the car, she realized something with quiet, startling clarity. She hadn't escaped. She had been relocated. From one controlled space to another. From one kind of fear to a different, more elegant one. The danger behind her had been removed, but the structure around her remained. Stronger now, more refined, impossible to break through. Kong guided her toward the entrance. His grip steady, his presence absolute. And as the doors closed behind them, Elena understood that leaving did not always mean freedom. Sometimes it only meant the beginning of a different kind of captivity. The elevator rose without a sound. Elena stood beside Kong Jaehyun as the city fell away beneath them, floor numbers gliding upward in quiet succession. The walls were glass, seamless and spotless, reflecting soft light that made everything feel suspended. Neither night nor morning, neither arrival nor escape. She wrapped the coat tighter around herself. The ride felt longer than it should have, not because of distance but because of what each floor represented. With every silent ascent, something familiar loosened its hold. The noise of the streets, the press of other lives, the small, grim comforts of anonymity. When the doors finally opened, Elena stepped into a world that did not belong to her. The space beyond was vast and meticulously composed. Polished stone floors gleamed beneath warm, recessed lighting. Clean lines stretched outward without clutter, without softness. Floor-to-ceiling windows curved along the far wall, offering a breathtaking view of the city sprawled below. Millions of lights blinking like constellations trapped in glass. She stopped short, breath-catching. It was beautiful, undeniably so, and utterly unreachable. "You'll stay here," Kong said quietly, his voice grounding her before the awe could overwhelm her. "Until arrangements are complete." Arrangements. Another word that carried more weight than it should. Men moved through the space with efficient silence, placing items where they belonged, removing others that no longer did. No one looked at Elena directly. No one asked her questions. She was acknowledged only through Kong, by glances that sought confirmation before action. She followed him deeper into the penthouse, her footsteps echoing softly. The air felt different up here, cleaner, lighter, touched with a faint scent of cedar and something sharper beneath it. Control, she thought. This place smelled like control. A door slid open to reveal a bedroom larger than her entire apartment had been. The bed was low and expansive, dressed in pale linen that looked untouched. A seating area rested near the windows, arranged to face the skyline as if the view itself were an offering. Elena stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "This is yours," Kong said. The word landed strangely. Mine had always meant obligation, expectation, fear. Here it meant something else, something still dangerous but quieter. "Someone will bring food," he continued. "A doctor will come shortly." She nodded, her body moving on instinct rather than understanding. He paused, then added, "No one will enter without my permission. Safety wrapped in restriction. Protection with a lock built into it." Kong turned to leave. The sudden absence of his presence startled her. She reached out before she could stop herself, fingers brushing the sleeve of his coat. "Am I allowed to leave this room?" she asked. He looked at her hand where it touched him, then back at her face. There was no irritation in his expression, only consideration. "Yes," he said. "Within this floor." The answer was precise, measured. "And the building?" she asked softly. "Was brief, intentional." "No." Her chest tightened, but she nodded. She had asked. She had been answered. That was more honesty than she was used to. Kong inclined his head once and stepped away, the door closing behind him with a whisper that sounded final. Silence rushed in to fill the space he left. Elena stood alone in the center of the room, surrounded by luxury so refined it felt unreal. She moved slowly, almost reverently, touching the back of a chair, the cool surface of the table, the smooth glass of the window. 40 floors below, the city pulsed with life. Traffic streamed along familiar roads. People laughed, argued, hurried home. From this height, it all looked distant, manageable, insignificant. She pressed her palm against the glass. No one could reach her here. The realization brought relief. And something colder. A knock sounded at the door. Blight. A woman entered with a tray of food, her movements gentle, her expression neutral. She spoke quietly, explaining what each dish was, then left without waiting for a response. The door sealed behind her, soundless. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the untouched meal. Her stomach churned, hunger and nausea tangled together. She took a single bite, chewing slowly, forcing herself to swallow because she knew she needed strength, even if she didn't yet know what for. When she finished, exhaustion settled over her like a heavy blanket. She lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the building. It felt alive around her, a controlled ecosystem designed to exclude unpredictability. Secure. Alone. As sleep finally crept in, Elena understood the shape of her new world. Up here nothing could touch her, and no one could hear her either. The city glittered below, vast and unreachable, while Elena drifted into uneasy rest, protected, isolated, and suspended far above the life she once knew. Elena woke to silence so complete it took her a moment to realize she was awake. Light filtered through the glass wall in a pale wash, turning the city below into a soft blur of motion and color. Morning had arrived without ceremony. No alarms, no shouting, no footsteps pacing the other side of a door. For a few seconds she let herself forget. Then memory returned, slow and heavy. The closet. The messages. The calm voice that had cut through her panic like a blade. Hung Jae-hyun. She sat up, the sheets whispering as they slid against her skin. Someone had changed her clothes while she slept. Soft fabric, loose, clean. The realization made her stiffen. It should have frightened her more than it did. Instead, it left behind a dull awareness. Nothing here happened without intention. A knock came at the door. Not abrupt, not intrusive, controlled. "Come in," Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. Kong entered alone. He wore dark slacks and a simple shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. No coat this time. No armor. Yet the room shifted around him as it had the night before, as if it recognized authority and adjusted accordingly. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "Yes," she said, then hesitated. "I think." He accepted the answer without comment and moved to the window, gaze briefly tracing the city below before returning to her. He did not sit. He remained standing, hands relaxed at his sides. "You asked last night if you were free," he said. Elena's breath caught. She nodded. "I didn't answer fully," he continued. "This is why." He took a tablet from the side table and held it out. She hesitated only a second before taking it, fingers brushing his. The contact was brief, intentional. The screen lit up. Images, reports, headlines. She recognized the first photograph immediately. Her apartment building, cordoned off with flashing lights. Her stomach twisted. "What is this?" she whispered. "Reality," Kong said calmly. She scrolled. A missing person report. Name. Her photo, one she barely recognized, smiling stiffly at some long-forgotten event. A statement beneath it, attributed to a man whose voice still echoed in her nightmares. Concerned partner. Cooperative. Desperate. "He filed it less than an hour after we left," Kong said. "He told them you were unstable, that you had been threatening to hurt yourself, that you disappeared during an argument." Elena's hands began to shake. "That's a lie," she said, even as dread pooled in her chest. "Yes," Kong agreed. "It is also effective." She scrolled further. Comments. Speculation. A familiar pattern forming. Doubt, curiosity, judgment. "He has connections," Kong continued. "In law enforcement. In the courts. People who owe him favors. People who prefer simple narratives." Elena swallowed hard. "So, they'll look for me. They already are." The tablet slipped from her fingers onto the bed. She pressed her hands into her lap, grounding herself in the sensation of fabric and breath. "If I go back," she said slowly, "they won't protect me." "No," Kong said. "They will return you." The word hit harder than she expected. Return. As if she were an object misplaced. "He will claim remorse," Kong went on. "Fear. Confusion. He will say you need help. That you are a danger to yourself." Elena closed her eyes. She could hear it all perfectly. The practiced sorrow. The way people wanted to believe him because belief was easier than confrontation. "And if I tell them the truth?" she asked. Kang's gaze sharpened, not unkindly, but without illusion. "Then he will deny it," he said. "And you will be alone in a room full of people who need to believe him." Silence settled between them, heavy and unavoidable. Elena exhaled shakily. "So that's it," she murmured. "I can't go back." Kong didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was low. "You could," he said. "Once." She looked up at him. "And it would be the last decision you ever made for yourself." The truth of it settled into her bones. She rose from the bed and walked to the window, pressing her fingertips against the cool glass. From up here, the city looked harmless. Orderly. She knew better now. "I thought leaving meant escaping," she said quietly. Kong stepped closer, stopping just behind her. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. "Leaving only matters," he said, "if there is somewhere safe to arrive." Elena laughed softly, the sound brittle. "So I'm trapped." Kong considered her profile reflected faintly in the glass. "No," he said. "You are protected." She turned to face him. "By you?" "Yes." The word carried finality, not arrogance. Elena searched his face, looking for reassurance, for promise, for something soft. She found none of it. What she found instead was certainty, cold, unwavering, and honest. She nodded slowly. For the first time, she understood the full shape of her situation. The outside world had already chosen a story, and she was no longer part of it. Elena stood by the window long after Kong Jaehyun left her alone. The city below continued as if nothing had changed. Traffic moved. Lights shifted. Lives unfolded without hesitation. From this height, it all looked orderly, almost merciful. She wondered how many people down there believed safety was something guaranteed, something freely given. She knew better now. A soft chime announced the door opening behind her. She didn't turn. She knew who it would be before he spoke. "You haven't eaten," Kong said. She glanced back. He stood just inside the room, posture relaxed, gaze sharp. A tray rested on the table beside him, untouched. "I'm not hungry." "That isn't true," he replied calmly. "You're anxious." She exhaled, the tension in her shoulders tightening. "You're very certain about what I feel." "I pay attention," he said. Elena turned fully to face him. "You also decide." "Yes." The simplicity of his answer made her pulse jump. She gestured toward the windows, the doors, the invisible boundaries surrounding her. "You call this protection. But I can't leave. I can't contact anyone. I don't even know how long you plan to keep me here." Kong studied her for a moment, then moved closer, not invading her space, but closing the distance just enough to remind her she wasn't alone in this room. "You are alive," he said. "Unhurt. Untouched. That is not an accident." "I didn't ask for ownership," she said quietly. "No," he agreed. "You asked for survival." The words struck deeper than she expected. "You answered my message," she said. "You didn't have to do more than that." "I did exactly what was required," Kong replied. "What you needed. And what if what I need isn't the same as what you want?" His gaze sharpened, but his voice remained steady. "Then we negotiate." The word unsettled her. Negotiation implied leverage, power, choice, but only within defined limits. "What are the rules?" she asked. Kong inclined his head slightly, as if acknowledging the seriousness of the question. "You remain here," he said. You do not leave this building without my approval. You do not contact anyone from your former life unless I decide it is safe. In return, you will be protected. Fully. Elena crossed her arms, hugging herself. And if I refuse? He didn't hesitate. Then I will still protect you. She frowned. That doesn't sound like a choice. It is, Kong said. It is simply not a comfortable one. The honesty in his tone stripped away any illusion she had been clinging to. He wasn't pretending this was freedom. He wasn't disguising the cost. You could have handed me over, she said softly. You could have let the authorities handle it. And you would be dead, he replied just as softly. Silence stretched between them, taut and fragile. Elena moved back toward the bed and sat down slowly. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls had drawn closer while she wasn't looking. I don't want to disappear, she said. I don't want to become someone hidden away because it's convenient. Kang's expression shifted, not softening but focusing like a man recalibrating. You are not hidden, he said. You are placed. The distinction made her chest ache. You say you're protecting me, she continued. But from what I see, I've just traded one cage for another. Kong stepped closer again, stopping directly in front of her. This time, he lowered himself slightly so they were at eye level. His presence unyielding but not aggressive. The cage you were in before was designed to break you, he said. This one is designed to keep you intact. Elena looked away, blinking hard. And if I don't want a cage at all? Then you will need power, Kong replied. And power is never free. She met his gaze again, something fierce flickering beneath the fear. So this is the price, she said. My autonomy. For now, he corrected. The words lingered, dangerous and tempting. For now, she repeated. Kong rose smoothly. Eat, he said. Rest. You will not make decisions tonight. And tomorrow. Tomorrow, he said. We begin discussing what kind of protection you are willing to live with. He turned and left, the door sealing behind him with its familiar whisper. Elena sat alone in the quiet, staring at the untouched tray. Safety had been given to her without question. Freedom, she realized, would have to be earned. And the man who controlled both was not someone she could escape, only someone she would have to face. Elena woke before the city did. The light beyond the glass was still soft, the skyline blurred by early haze. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the muted hum of the building, the distant, orderly heartbeat of a place designed to keep chaos out. Her body felt rested in a way that unsettled her. Held together. That was what frightened her most. She rose and walked barefoot to the window. From up here, the streets looked harmless, almost gentle. She knew better now. She had seen how easily truth could be folded, how protection could turn into a weapon when placed in the wrong hands. Freedom, she realized, was not just about open doors. It was about who waited on the other side. A quiet sound behind her made her turn. Kong Jae-hyun stood near the entrance, jacket draped over one arm. His presence as composed as ever. He hadn't knocked this time. The rules, she supposed, were already shifting. You're awake early, he said. So are you. He gave a faint inclination of his head, accepting the observation. His gaze moved briefly to the city, then back to her. You've been thinking, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Elena replied. About what happens if I leave. And she hesitated, the truth forming slowly, reluctantly. I wouldn't last. Kong didn't react. He never did when someone said what he already knew. They would find me, she continued. Or someone else like him would. The world outside isn't built to protect people like me. No, Kong agreed. It isn't. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, fingers pressing lightly into her skin as if to remind herself she was still real. I used to think freedom meant being alone, she said. No rules. No one watching. No one deciding things for me. And now, and now I see that being alone was what made me vulnerable. The words settled between them, heavy and irreversible. Kong stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. He didn't crowd her. He never needed to. His authority wasn't something he imposed physically. It existed whether she acknowledged it or not. "You are not weak for understanding that," he said. Elena looked up at him. "That's the problem," she said quietly. "You don't make me feel weak." Something unreadable flickered through his eyes. "You make me feel contained," she continued. "Like the world can't reach me. Like nothing bad can happen unless you allow it." "That is protection," Kong said. "It's also terrifying," she replied. "Because I don't know when protection turns into possession." Kong held her gaze steadily. "You will know," he said. "Because I won't lie to you about it." The honesty in his voice cut deeper than reassurance ever could. Elena turned back to the window. "If I chose to walk out of here today," she said, "you wouldn't stop me, would you?" "Oz. I would not force you," Kong said at last. "But I would not follow." She closed her eyes. That was the choice then. Not captivity versus freedom, but safety with him versus danger alone. Protection that came with conditions, versus autonomy that came with consequences. She turned to face him again. "When I was hiding," she said, "I thought the scariest thing in the world was the man who wanted to hurt me. And now I realize the scariest thing might be wanting to stay with the man who saved me." The admission hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. Kong didn't move. Didn't reach for her. Didn't claim the moment. "Fear is not always a warning," he said. "Sometimes it is recognition." Elena swallowed. Recognition of what? Of where you are safest. The truth of it settled slowly, painfully, into her chest. She had spent her life equating safety with weakness, control with love, silence with survival. Somewhere along the way, she had learned to fear power because it had always been used against her. But Kang's power was different. Did not shout. It did not explain itself. Did not need permission. And for the first time, Elena understood something that made her pulse quicken with equal parts dread and relief. The man standing in front of her, cold, dangerous, uncompromising, felt safer than the open world ever had. She exhaled, steadying herself. "I don't know what this makes me," she said. Kang's gaze softened just barely. "It makes you honest." Elena looked once more at the city below, then back at him. Freedom was a door she could walk through. But safety, real safety, was standing right in front of her. And the most dangerous realization of all was this. She wasn't sure she wanted to leave.